Well, today on the Practical Church Podcast, I'm going to share with you 7 ways to balance working hard while also living at a sustainable pace. 7 ways to balancing working hard with sustainability. How do you work hard, get things done, but also be healthy for the long haul? Really excited. It's a topic that I'm quite passionate about. Some practical things that I've done that I will share with you. And as we get into today's episode, just remember, as always, that this show is brought to you in partnership with Mission Support. You can go to missionsupport.com, see any of their number of services. Real quickly, I just want to share with you about their graphics and video services that they do for churches. You'll be amazed at how outsourcing your graphics and video editing to their media specialists will save you not just money, but also time, and to make your church feel the professional level that you might want it to be online, on social media, and all that sort of thing. And so they support unique one-time projects, if that's something you're looking for, or also monthly comprehensive media support. So their plans include things like sermon graphics, event graphics, postcards, signage, social media posts, recap videos, sermon bumpers, and testimony and story videos. We talk a lot on Practical Church about the importance of your online presence and engaging people that way in a way that looks good. And so head to missionsupport.com today, talk to a guide, and see how they can help you in your media area. All right, 7 ways to balance working hard with sustainability. How do you work hard but also live for the long haul? Before I give you the 7, I just want to make a couple of brief kind of set the stage here, and then I'll get you the 7. First is just remember, and I say this a lot on this show, that busyness is a choice. Busyness is a choice. And busyness, I think, in our culture today, really kind of, I don't like the word busy because it kind of is like the victim mentality. If somebody tells you you're busy, they're busy. It's like you can't, like, what do you say to that? It's kind of like a conversation stopper. And we often say busy as if like we have no choice in the matter. And so listen, how the way we set up our lives, the things that we do, busyness is a choice. And so you don't want to be like busy, right? You could have a lot going on, but you don't always want to be busy. At the same time, we should also work hard. Like, we should be people as followers of Jesus, whether you're a pastor, minister, or wherever you work. Like, we should be people that work like really, really hard and healthy and sustainably. I remember years ago when we planted New City Church, there was another guy planting kind of near our town. And this sounds like I'm throwing shade on him, and I really don't mean to, but this is just a example of this. He was in the launch phase of his church, and he would post a lot on social media about how his wife and his son were his first priority, his first ministry. And like, yes and amen, that's true. But the vibe I got from all his posts, because I knew him a little bit, but not very well, from his post was like, it seems like all he ever did was like hang out with his family. Like, that's kind of like what it seemed like. And instead of like, hey, you got to spend some time working hard. Like, sometimes you got to put a few extra hours in or whatever. It was very much like, this is all I'm going to do. And this is my family's first. And I'll do the church like as I have time. It was just like, it was weird. And that might be like an extreme case. But we need to like work hard. We need to work hard. And so how do we do both? Like, how do we work hard, but also sustainably? That's what I'm going to share in this episode, because again, work is not a bad thing. It's a good thing. So here we go. Here's, some things that I do, some thoughts, reflections that you can apply to your life as you see fit. Here's the first point. For me, and for my wife and I, but for me, like for ministry, like scheduling sustainability, 2 ministry nights a week is like my max. Now, of course, there are occasions where that could be different. There are exceptions, and they are exceptions. And it's also to say, it's not like every week for 2 nights, like I'm out doing like ministry stuff. However, the standard that we have created in our house is 2. Now, when our community groups are in session, this includes community groups. So that's 1 night. I meet with our elders twice a month, and one of those meetings is a Monday night. And so the week that I have an elders meeting and community group, like, that's it. That's it. Like, I won't take meetings in the evening, or we won't have people over for church stuff, or, if there's a church event that week that's going on at the church, maybe a worship and prayer night, something like that counts. And just having that number in our head, or in our head, like as a decision, helps us sustain for the long haul. Now, of course, every once in a while, there can be an exception if needed. But if somebody wants to meet, or like maybe a couple wants to come over, or maybe someone wants to get together, but they can't do anytime during the day, and they need to do an evening, or there's a church event, that sort of thing. In order for us to like be sustainable for the long haul, like that's our limit. And so it won't be that week. If somebody wants to reach out or meet or whatever, like it'll be the next week. It'll be 2 or 3 weeks from now. I also want to say part of this is like the season of life situation. So my wife and I have 2 kids in elementary school, and we also are foster parents. So as of right now, we've got 3 kids in elementary school. And so like, that's just like a season. And we've got kids, my son plays soccer, my daughter does like acting, that sort of thing. And so like, we want to be there with our kids. We want to have dinner with our kids. We want to like, this is like a season where like, that's like really, really important. If you don't have kids yet, if you're empty nesters, that sort of thing, life can be different. But in this season, it's also really important just for our family. And so one of the things that we help us to do for us, again, I'm not saying you need to do this, but I do think you should like think through this. What would be a sustainable rhythm for you? For me, it's 2 ministry nights a week, and that's it. And again, there can be exceptions, but like exceptions are only exceptions if they're the exception. So if you like, whatever limit you set, if you think this is wise for you and your family, if you're like, this is the limit, here's the exception, but you do the exception like every single month or twice a month, then it's no longer exception. Like, so it needs to be rare. Now, again, things can happen, certainly, but they shouldn't be like pre-planned out. Hey, going to this week, we already planned like 4 ministry nights stuff a week. So again, it's different depending on your work schedule, all that sort of thing. I'm just saying for us, that was helpful for Christina and I. Here's how many ministry things we do. We originally set this up probably, like about 4 years ago. There was a time where we were doing pre-marriage counseling for like 4 couples at once. And at this time, my wife like wanted to be part of all the premarital counseling sessions. Now she's not. She just does one with me, and the rest I do with a couple, just with me and them. And so like all these people were asking us to do their premarital counseling, and it was insane. Like it was just too much. Then we had church, stuff here and there. We had community group, and I was like, this is not sustainable. And so we just like learned like, here's our limit. And so that helps us. Like I'm willing to work, and I'm willing to work at night. Absolutely. I'm willing to stay late if something comes up, for sure. But there's like a cap to it, so I can be sustainable for the future. So for us, number 1 is 2 ministry nights a week. I'm not saying you need to do that, but I do think you should think through, how many evenings, family time that you're allowing ministry to cut into. Number 2, here's a way that I balance working hard with sustainability. Number 2 is I don't take morning meetings. Again, please note, I'm not saying this is what everybody should do. This is just what works well for me. I'm the most focused and get the most done in the morning. I just really like knowing like, hey, when I start the workday, I've got like 2, 3, 4 hours depending on the day to like get stuff done. So to work on sermon prep or review my sermon, community group leader guides, write a newsletter, work on like a speaking for some church event, whatever, like just focused work. It's really, really helpful for me to know it's focused. And so I don't take morning meetings. Now, what this does for me is like, it guarantees that like the stuff I got to get done every day is going to get done. So it gives me a lot of flexibility in the afternoons. I've shared in previous episodes, what my schedule looks like, so I'm not going to go into that here. But I have a lot of flexibility in the afternoon, and I take a lot of meetings in the afternoon from about noon on, depending on the day, knowing that, hey, like no matter what the afternoon looks like or the flexibility afternoon or how it can look differently, like I know I'm getting things done in the morning. I think a big part of the reason why pastors and ministry leaders are overworked is that they don't prioritize their schedule. They don't prioritize sermon prep if you prep weekly. And so you're like doing it whenever it works and you're going around everyone else's schedule. And it takes you way more time to do the task if it's like unfocused and broken up. Rather, contrast that with focusing and not broken up, you can get significant things done in a quicker amount of time. And so I don't take morning meetings. Again, there are exceptions every once in a while, for sure, but they are definitely the exception. They're definitely the exception. And I do this because it allows me to get everything I need to get done. Now, your schedule, how you like to do things, your rhythms may be different. I would just say that there should be times in your week that you don't take meetings, that you don't people can't like schedule things or like, here's when I work on sermons or here's when I do this thing, here's when I get this task done. And also just like psychologically makes it feel less heavy. Like I know going into the week, there might be some, unexpected things that come up, but these a lot of times, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I'm going to get stuff done. And so like, I'm not worried like, oh, when am I going to get sermon prep in or when am I going to get this in? Like, I know when it's going to happen. So again, there can be exceptions, emergencies, absolutely. But as a general rule, I don't take morning meetings. I don't offer them on my calendar. Of course, I'm flexible if somebody needs it, something's going on, or like if it's somebody that I want to meet with for something, obviously it'll be more opened up. But as a general rule, I don't take morning meetings, not because I'm lazy, but because like, man, I want to focus and get stuff done. So for example, when I record these episodes for Practical Church Planning, it happens on Mondays at 10:30 a.m. Like every other week on Monday at 10:30 a.m., that's when these get recorded. And it's part of that time, like before I meet with people, like it's on the schedule. I don't have to move it around. So I know it's going to happen. It's going to get finished. I don't take morning meetings. My advice to you is like just be very clear on there should be some times in your calendar in the week that you know I'm going to get X, Y, and Z done, and it's not going to be impeded on, or I'm not going to like change my schedule. If you want to be healthy for the long haul, I highly recommend that. So again, for us, 2 ministry nights a week. Number one. Number two, I don't take morning meetings. Number three, again, these are just like things that I do, take and leave and adjust as you need. Here's a third thing for me. Mondays are my longest days. And I mean longest days by sometimes literally, like work days. And then sometimes, even if not literally, figuratively in the sense of like kind of draining. I do a lot of tasks on Mondays. You know, for example, when we have our elder meeting, our once a month elder meeting, that's on a Monday. And so it's like, you know, a 14-hour day for me when that happens, because it's like I work until 6 o'clock and then we have our meeting until 8:30. So it's just like, man, it's a long day. But I just want to say, like, I like it that way. Like, I like on Mondays, I do a lot of tasks, administrative stuff, which isn't as fun for me. But it's like, it gets done. And so like, I just feel better throughout the rest of the week. I feel more relaxed. I feel more free, because I know like a lot of the significant stuff was finished and was completed. And so like, I pack out my Mondays to get like lots of stuff done. I don't typically take meetings on Mondays other than like stuff with staff, but like people in the church, every once in a while, someone will like schedule a lunch on Monday. But like, it's not the only time you could really meet with me at a new city on Mondays, like for lunch, because everything else, morning, afternoons, like it's all there. Do sermon review, meeting, that sort of thing. And so like, they're just my longest days. And I said that to say this, like, I also think in the mix of, hey, sometimes I want to work hard but be sustainable. I mean, it might be wise to pick a day to work longer. And if you got married with kids, you know, I know one pastor who, he does Mondays too. And he every Monday he works a 12-hour day. Like that just like he likes to do it. He's got the schedule with his family, whatever. He's like, it's the only day a week that I do it. I'm very, very clear on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, whatever schedule is. Like I'm home at this time, whatever. But like it works for me and get everything's done. I think sometimes what can happen is we can feel bad because we've got a lot of stuff going on and we feel like, well, I've got to be home every night. I think like if you're married, if you have kids, like talk with your spouse, but like come to a rhythm that makes you feel like you're not overwhelmed and that you both agree upon. Like it's very clear, you know, for this guy who works like 12-hour Mondays every single time, here's just what I do. And so I like it's just helpful for me to know like I'm gonna get a lot of stuff done on Mondays, like a lot of stuff. Like I'm gonna go from thing to thing to thing. Honestly, it helps me too. I know sometimes in ministry Mondays can be hard. It can be discouraging. It can be the day you most likely want to quit. Ironically, I don't know if this is true for you, although it probably is because like we're all human. I have found that sometimes the Mondays after like really great, awesome, encouraging Sundays are really kind of discouraging for me. I don't know why. Like attendance is great, baptisms, whatever, and it's like I feel kind of down on Mondays after that, which is maybe kind of weird. And so part of the reason like I like to get a lot of stuff done on Mondays is like I'm focused and I'm not worried about, you know, helps me like combat some of that weirdness I can kind of feel after a weekend, if that makes sense. So for me, I just do a ton of stuff. My recommendation for you is to maybe pick a day or two or time where it's like, hey, this is the time where I just get stuff done so that I can be more flexible during the rest of the week. So again, for me, I'm very flexible to meet Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday afternoons. My calendar, like if I sent you my calendar, it's like, hey, someone wants to meet, I send them my calendar. Like there's like a lot of options available. And part of that is because like, man, I know I'm going to get stuff done in the mornings and I'm going to get a lot of stuff done on Monday. So for me, Monday's the longest day. I might recommend for you, man, maybe pick a day that's like, I'm just going to grind on these days and it might help you the rest of the week. So that was number 3 for me, how I balance it. Mondays are my longest day. Number 4, this is just description of what I do. You don't have to do this. I'm not saying it's the best. It's what works for me. But you know, think about this, how it can work for you. For me, I at the most will take 2 meetings a day. And by meetings, I mean like people at church I want to meet, talk about stuff. On my Calendly, I have the default where like after 2 meetings are picked, it just says the rest of the day is booked. I only take 2. A couple reasons for that. One, I really enjoy meeting with people. Even like, sometimes it's draining and hard depending on what's going on, but like it gives me a lot of life. I really enjoy it. But it can be heavy. And so I just feel like after working and doing like 2 meetings, sometimes I can't give my best anymore. And I think part of that maybe could be training, like counselors or whatever. They'll meet with multiple people a day, but they're also used to it. I think as you're thinking about your calendar, it might be because of the way that I set up my work week. I do 2 meetings a day. The way that you might set up your work week is you might say, hey, Wednesdays are like, I'll take like 5 meetings. Like it's completely open. I'll take tons of meetings on maybe 1 day a week, whatever works for you. For me, I just do 2. One is because it can be a little draining. Like when I've done more than like 2, sometimes I find myself by the 3rd or 4th not being super engaged. So that's part of it. Second reason is just time. So when you have meetings, and you're traveling back and forth, it can eat up a lot of your day. And so when you have like more than 2, before and after, then, after the meeting, you take some time to kind of refocus. You might have to think through the things you went through, whatever, talked about, that sort of thing, to get refocused on what you're doing. Sometimes meetings can go long. And so I found for me, it's a time thing to be like driving all around and like going all these back to backs. Or sometimes it's like you have a meeting, then you have like 30 minutes until the next meeting, and it's hard to like get good focus work done in that short amount of time. So it kind of feels like wasted time in some sense sometimes. And so that's what I do. To work really hard is I will only take 2 meetings a week. Now, again, if someone's like, hey, I need to meet today, it's an emergency, obviously that's different. But I'm just saying, hey, if somebody wants to meet, or I offer to meet with somebody in a new city, if there's already 2 meetings on that day, it won't be an option to meet because it can be draining to me, and it can take like a lot of time to like go from place to place to place. Again, it could be different. Like, I don't know, if you're a larger church and everybody meets you in your church office, and so you're not, going anywhere or that sort of place, that could help. But for me, I found 2 meetings a day. And again, I don't want to act like every day I'm meeting with 2 people, so I have like 10 meetings. I'm not saying that I'm meeting with 2 people every single day. I'm just saying that like I won't typically do more than 2. For those reasons. And so again, that helps me get stuff done, be sustainable for the long haul. Of course, like you could do 4, but I just know after 5 or whatever, if you've like, I don't know, really in demand or something, I just know like, again, my goal here is I want to work hard, but I also want to do this for a long time. And New City is turning 8 in April. And, honestly, like I feel pretty good. I feel pretty good overall. And I think that's part of it, is kind of doing these. Hey, I'm going to work hard. I'm not going to shy away from it, but I'm going to have like really clear boundaries about what that looks like. So for me, 2 meetings a day max. I'm not talking about like staff or that sort of thing. I'm talking about like meeting, counseling people at the church. That was number 4. Number 5. Now this might sound unsustainable, but if you've been listening to the show for a while, hopefully I've convinced you at least to try it. Here's number 5, is I respond to all emails and all requests. I respond to all emails and all requests, and I do so in a timely manner. And you might seem like that seems like very draining. It's actually the complete opposite, because I've got nothing sitting in my inbox. It's like waiting for me to hear from. Like I'm disciplined on it. I see it. I respond. And so like it's answered. It's answered. And so I do like the inbox 0 thing at the end of each workday. Like I've got no emails in my inbox. And I've shared before, like email is like where I funnel everything. So if somebody sends me a text and it needs like more follow-up than just a text, I'll say, send me an email. Or somebody sends me a message on social media, I'll direct them the same way. Not everybody always does it. And in my mind, it's like, well, it must not be that important. Now, I'm not necessarily talking about like New City people. Like if someone goes to New City Church, I'll definitely work with them. But sometimes, as a pastor, you get like random requests to meet from random people, or people have questions that, whatever. It's like that. I'm like, hey, or like other church planners want to talk to me. They've got questions for me. I'm like, here's what I do. And then they'll send me a Facebook message, for example. And I'll be like, yeah, sure, send me an email. And they don't. And it's like, well, obviously it's not that important, or you would have done it. And then many people do, and then we follow up. And so I just say like, respond to our email requests. Now here's my rule. Again, emails come from people, and people matter to God, so that emails matter. That's kind of like, that's my thing about email. I won't respond if it's like a spam. Sometimes we'll get like, hey, we want to build a playground at your church, or like we want to like be like, we're a cleaning company, or I'm a missionary from somewhere I've never heard of. Depending on the email though, the missionaries I typically will respond. If it seems very like spammy, copy and pasty, like I won't. But if it's from a person, somebody asking something, like I'm always going to respond. And I would just say, being very disciplined on that, it's easier than just kind of letting it go, because then every time you look at your inbox, you're like, oh, I got to respond to that. I got to say that. And in my experience, and talking with other people, one of the biggest reasons why emails and messages get backlogged is because people are afraid to say no, or give people an answer they don't want to hear. And so instead of saying, no, I can't do that, or I'm not interested, or this wouldn't work out in this time, depending on what the request is, they just kind of like ignore it, and they wait like a week. And so they feel bad every time they see it, and then they finally say no. So like, for example, we'll have people email me from time to time, like church plants, and they're like, they want to meet, they want to share what they're doing. And sometimes they're clear, which I appreciate, when they say like partner with us, and sometimes they're not. But listen, I get the church planting world. And so my response is always, hey, like, I'd love to chat, talk, share my experiences here. We don't have any funding right now, because our funding is, and this is a true statement, typically already allotted. Like we are very pro church plant funding. But it's it's like, I tell them like straight up, hey, here's what we can't do. But if you still want to chat and learn, I'm happy to do so. And so my encouragement is like, if it's not going to work out, you can't do whatever the request is, just go ahead and say no and respond, because you'll be less stressed if you go ahead and answer the question. And it's just the kind thing to do anyway, if you know the answer is no. So for me, I respond to all emails and requests. I've shared how I've done that in previous episodes. You can scroll back. But it helps me. Like I work hard at that, but it feels so much better than just letting it sit in your inbox and say, I'm gonna answer it later. I'm gonna answer it later. That just like really gets at you, eats at you. And especially every time you check your inbox, you see you haven't responded yet. It can be kind of stressful, not good for sustainability. So I work hard, man. I respond to messages, and that helps be sustainable. So that was number 5. Number 6, so all that to say, I've got rules and boundaries. Here's number 6. I will work later and or extra on occasions as it is needed. Like I'll do it. This is not a knock, so please hear me. This is not a knock on people to do this. I know some guys that are like I'll work till this day every day and then I'm done. And if I can't get it done, I'm not going to do it. And I get it. If you're like working hard, getting things done, I'm not knocking that. But I am saying like, in my attempt to be healthy, I should say this for me. In my attempt to be healthy with my family, when kids love to church, have a good marriage, all that sort of thing, I also know that sometimes, man, you just got to work. Like there could be a crisis, an emergency going on. Like right now, as I'm recording this, we're getting ready to move locations, that sort of thing. We're still trying to figure it out. There's going to be some like extra hours I got to put in for this to happen. And like, I'm okay with it. Especially because like, just to be honest, like there's a lot of equity built up with my family, my marriage, my kids. Like my wife, like she trusts me. She knows I'm going to be home. She knows I prioritize the family. So it's like, it's not a big deal every once in a while if I've got to do more. And like, it's totally fine because it's intentional. With family time's intentional. We spend our time's intentional. So like, it's okay. So I don't know, I'm sure these next few months as we get ready to move and clean up and buy the stuff, put stuff together, blah, blah. There's going to be a season where like there might be some odd hours doing stuff, and that's okay. I just want to say, like I have I'm pretty strict, I guess. I don't know. I don't know if strict, I think habitual. I just got good habits around my calendar and my schedule so that when I have to do something extra, like I don't feel bad. And so I do just want to encourage you. I think sometimes as we talk about like, when I say things like busyness is a choice, or it kind of seems like in our culture a little bit like we've kind of swung the pendulum from like working 80-hour weeks isn't good to like anything work more than 30-hour weeks is like not good. Like it's bad to like have a full-time job. I just want to say like, it's okay. It's okay to put some work in when it's needed. Not all the time. You got to be intentional with it, but it's okay. And so again, for me, like I'll stay late. I'll take a meeting last second if I have to, because generally speaking, my habits are really solid and really good. It allows for that extra thing. Where I see people get into trouble is that they have no firm boundaries. Extra things come up from time to time. And so they're already not prioritizing time at home or with their kids, with their wife, whatever. And so when all these extra things come up, like, of course your family feels neglected because you've never prioritized them in any other way. Like I don't know this will happen. Maybe one of these things will leak out as my kids get older. They'll hear me say this. But like I have a dream that when my kids turn 18, they will be able to say, I never questioned whether or not my dad loved me more than the church. Or I always knew, let me put it this way, the double negative's kind of weird. I always knew that my dad loved me more than he loved the church. Like that's my dream. And so that's why I do these, like have these boundaries. I don't want them to, like my desire is, I know there's a lot of like pastor kid issues and people got, like, I want them to be like, I want them as they have conversations with maybe other pastor kids as they get older to not to be able to relate to the pastor kids that are like, yeah, my dad's never home. I want them to be like have no category of like how that's a possibility. So that's why I'm like that. But like, I just want to say like, it's okay. Like sometimes things happen and sometimes we got to put in the work. And so sometimes I'll stay late. Sometimes I got to travel. Sometimes like, and it's okay because I'm really good at, generally speaking, at how I spend my time. And so I do want to say, sometimes I will work later or extra on occasions, and I don't feel guilty because like that just happens. Like sometimes life happens and you got to do more, and that happens too. So number 6, I will work later extra if needed on occasion. And then number 7, last but not least, and I'll re-say all these too because I know it's a lot of them here. Number 7 is I do inbox 0 and plus a task list 0 at the end of each day. Again, I talked about this in previous episodes, but I just want to point out, it's so freeing. And I'm not saying everybody has to do it the way that I'm doing it. I just want to say but I do want to say my experience of not doing inbox 0 and now probably going on 3-4 years of it. Like, it's just really nice when the Gmail says, well, I forget what it says. You have no mail, or like relax, there's no mail, nothing in your inbox. And that's like a normal occurrence for me. And so maybe that, I've talked about that a lot, but I also want to say the task list being 0. I used Todoist. It's an app manager I've shared before. And I put due dates on all my tasks, so it's very clear when I'm supposed to do what. And so what happens, like at the end of a workday, if there's something on my task list that I didn't get to, that doesn't have to be done that day, I will go in there and change it to be due tomorrow. Because it's like, it just doesn't feel good to be like, hey, this is past due. Even if it's not an emergency, even if it's something that doesn't have to be due that day, I still give myself a due date. It's like, yeah, I could do it another day this week. I still go in there at the end of my workday, and if there are any tasks that have not been completed, I assign them a different day. So like when I leave at the end of the day, like my brain's like, hey, I did everything I was supposed to do today. And so, inbox 0 and task list 0 are really helpful for me. I put in the work to like be on top of that stuff, so that like it's more relaxing at the end of the day, and I can be more sustainable in my ministry life. And so those are 7 things that I do, 7 ways to balance working hard with sustainability. I'll just recap them quickly because I know there's 7 of them. And again, my thing is like, you got to figure out your rhythms, what works for you, when you're most energized, what type of work you like to do, and then just be intentional. That's my thing. Like, just be intentional and not reactive with how you schedule your time. So number 1, 2 ministry nights a week is what I do outside of normal working hours. Number 2, I don't take morning meetings. Number 3, Mondays are my longest days. Number 4, I do 2 meetings a day max with New City people when I talk about stuff going on in their life. Number 5, I respond to all emails and requests. Number 6, I will work later and extra on occasions as needed, and I don't really feel bad about it. And then number 7, inbox 0 and task list 0 at the end of each day. Man, that's those things I do to work really hard, but it's also sustainable for the future. Take and leave what might work for you, but those are some things that I do. So here is my observation for this episode, and it has to do with church websites. I don't know that this is like best practice. It's what we do at New City, and I know that most churches don't do it, but I kind of think a lot of church websites that I look at don't do this, but I think it's really helpful, and that's this. I might recommend putting your upcoming events on the homepage of your church website, on the homepage. So again, you can always check out what we're doing, newcityrdu.com. If you want to see what it looks like for us, like under our header image where it says like plan a visit, our address and our location, then it has like upcoming events. And the reason we do that, so you can click on the thing and then it goes into the page that actually has the event with more information. We do that 2 reasons. One, the number one, and I'm sure that's talk about this a lot, the number one demographic of person who goes to your church website is a new person. And so it is just helpful for them to know, like, here's what is coming up, but we've got things planned. Now, I do want to say, depending on who you use to make your church website, Ministry Support can help you with that if you need a website builder. If an event is over, you need to make sure it's no longer on your website, because that looks really, really bad. Like when an event is over, or Christmas Eve is over, or Easter is over, and the homepage of your website still says it. Like what that screams is we don't expect new people who are the primary demographic that go to your website to be on your website. So make sure you're on top of that. But for us, it's just like it's like an image with the title, and they have to click on that if they want more information. But it just shows people, hey, like we've got stuff coming up, and some of these things like you might be interested in. So that's it. The second reason we do that is it's really helpful for church announcements. We don't do a church app. I know people do different things. I personally don't recommend most churches. I would advise most churches to not have an app. There are exceptions to this, especially if you're a larger church. There can be some reasons why you might want one. Generally speaking, I wouldn't recommend it because most people don't download new apps or they're not engaged with it unless they have to be in it constantly. And so for us, like when we have signups and stuff, we always just say, hey, go to newcityrdu.com because all the events are right there on the homepage. And so I just would recommend trying that. And that way people can see what's going on. Kind of our rule for New City is we don't put anything on the website that is over a month out. Unless it's the weekender, which is what we do about every 6, 7, 8 weeks for new people. That's the only thing that's like always on the website. But other than that, if it's more than a month, we don't put it on the website yet. And we'll have anywhere, depends on what's going on, maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 is like the most we'll do. But we typically don't have all church-wide things on the website, that many. But it's probably about 3 to 4 at a time. People can know what's going on. So I might recommend trying that on your website. Let new people know what's coming up, and your current people know what's coming up as well. You could try homepage or having events on the homepage of your website. Well, my personal growth tip for this episode has to do with fighting our distracted environment. Fighting our distracted environment. Here's the deal. If you struggle to stay focused, stay on task, or with spending too much time on your phone, it's important to remember that it isn't simply due to a lack of willpower. It's not just because like you don't have enough willpower. It's because our modern environment, this is important, our modern environment is set up for you to fail. Our modern environment is set up for you and I to fail. So for example, social media apps spend millions, billions of dollars maybe at some point, are designed to keep you on the platform. So they're designed with really smart researchers and tons of money to keep you on the platform. Notifications, gamification of apps and software, and the fear of missing out are designed to keep you coming back. Advertisers mine your personal data to make you less content with what you have, so you'll spend more time being less content, scrolling, trying to buy things. You see, here's why knowing all this matters. That instead of blaming yourself, what you should do is focus on creating an environment that helps you fight back. In other words, don't rely on willpower alone. You see, none of us can successfully win the war of our attention in the world we currently live in on willpower alone. We cannot do it. Instead, we should create habits and routines to help us focus as best we can in our technological age. And so here practically are some things that I do and have found helpful and would encourage others to do or to think through. For example, take email off your phone. Turn off all notifications on your phone. Decide what times of day you will not check your phone. Decide what times of day you won't check social media, news, or other time-sucking sites. In other words, here's when I'll check it. Here's when I'm not going to check it no matter what. Or how about this? Turn off your phone at night before you go to bed. You see, the goal is not to will yourself to focus better, but rather to predetermine what your game plan will be to fight distraction. It will never be perfect, but it can get better because habits, not willpower, will be of the best help. All right, well, the question for today's episode comes from a church planner that I chatted with on the phone last week. He's planning a church this fall, and he asked a question that I think like a lot of new church planners or new pastors are asking. He said this: he wanted to know how I can relax on Saturdays with having to preach on Sunday. Like knowing the church is coming, you got to preach. Like how can you actually relax? In fact, I have some pastor friends that like obviously thinks everyone should take a Sabbath, and they say if a pastor takes their Sabbath on Saturday, they say I don't believe them because they're like focused and worried on Sundays. You can't really relax. I don't subscribe to that. I would say my Sabbath is Saturday, but I'm also like not working on my sermon on Saturday. Like if you've listened to this for a while, you know I've got a routine. Like I'm pretty good. So how do I relax on Saturdays with having to preach on Sunday? So here's a couple thoughts. Number one, I couldn't really do this for about 4 years. And maybe that's just me. I don't know if that's encouraging or discouraging, but it took some time. Like now, like I really enjoy preaching. Like I look forward to it. I'm excited. The first couple of years, it's just like more nerve-wracking. You don't have as much experience. You hope it's going to go well. You're learning. I mean, I was really young. We planted New City Church. So I didn't have a lot of experience. And so I thought about it a lot. Now I'm just like, I'm more skilled because I've been doing it for 8 years, which is for some, maybe not that much. For others, if you're just starting out, that might seem like a lot. So like my skill is better because I've done it more. I'm also just like way more confident. When I was younger, it's like, man, I hope I have enough stuff to say. Like I don't want to like go too short, and I don't want to ramble, but I don't want to go too short. Now it's like, bro, it doesn't matter how few notes. Like this past Sunday, for example, I had fewer notes as I'm recording this than I typically do on a Sunday, and the sermon was still like the same length. Because it's like you just, as you learn, as you grow, as you know, like you just know more, you know the scriptures better, you're more sensitive, I think, to the Holy Spirit, you're not as nervous, and so you're a little bit more free-flowing when you're preaching. So when I say like it took me 4 years, part of it was like, it just took me time to like develop the skill of preaching to where like, I know it's going to be okay. Also, after you do it for a couple of years and you realize like it's always going to be okay, you don't have to hit a home run every Sunday. You might say something stupid or mess up or preach a dud and like the church doesn't crumble. So that helps. And so for me, it's just, I'll say this, like the biggest thing that's helpful is to do it for a while. And the second thing I would say is like have your sermon done and prepped and like don't work at it on Saturdays or just review it. And again, maybe you've got a sermon process that works for you and Saturdays works for you. That's great as long as it's intentional. But for me, like my advice is like be done. Like I'm done with the sermon Thursday morning. And of course I look at it Sunday morning, but I don't look at it any other time now. And I'm just not nervous anymore. Because I've been doing it for a while. And so my encouragement is like, if you're new to this, it just takes time. So I don't know if that's helpful or not. I don't think it will always feel as overwhelming as it does in the beginning. At least it didn't for me, but it did take a few years. So I don't know if that's encouraging or discouraging. Maybe discouraging because there's not a quick fix. Hopefully encouraging because it does get better over time. And this is something that I've shared with other pastors and they have said the same thing. So if you're new to this, man, you might have to give it some time, but there will come a day where you can relax more because you're just more confident with what's going on and you're more skilled as well. All right, well, thank you so much for joining me today on the Practical Church podcast. If you want more from me, you can go to DylanDotson.com. And if you want more from the show, you can go to missionsupport.com/practical. And don't forget, as always, we have a Practical Church Planting Facebook group where you can ask questions and chat with other pastors and ministry leaders. So if you're on Facebook, just search Practical Church Planting, and be sure to check out missionsupport.com as well for all your ministry needs. If you've got video and graphic needs, talk to a specialist today, see how they can maybe improve what you've got currently going on, help you come up with a plan to engage people online. And I'll be back with you in 2 weeks for another episode of the Practical Church Podcast.